And so the rebozo it represents the hug of our grandmothers. They say that when you have a rebozo around your shoulders, or when you're being wrapped with a rebozo, it's like all the grandmothers are coming to hold you and to honor you and to recognize you in this life-changing moment.
Welcome to the Well-Nourished Mother podcast. This is a show for women who desire a deeper, more mindful and meaningful pregnancy, birth, and motherhood experience. In this space, we bring so much reverence to the rite of passage that is the maiden to mother journey. I'm your host, Lauren Fortuna Flock, founder of Nest and Nourish. I'm a mother, an ex-nurse turned birth worker, and a trauma-informed somatic coach with a fiery passion for birth prep and motherhood prep that blends the head and the heart. Join me for inspiring conversations with experts, mothers, and all-around badass wise women, exploring all the ways we can nourish ourselves, body, mind, and heart, in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. This space will help you cultivate the knowledge, practices, and resources you need to be the most embodied, vibrant, authentic, intuitive, and well-nourished mother you deserve to be. So welcome. Let's do this. So thank you, Andréa, for being here with me. I always start all of my episodes the same way. So what's a word or phrase to describe your current season of motherhood?
It's hard to know what season I'm in because it feels like it's all going so fast since like the seasons that are changing. But I feel that I think a word would be threshold, and I like this definition of threshold, like not as a doorway, but as threshing, which comes from this action of beating the grain to sift away like the outer covering from like the edible inner part. And I feel like life and just like motherhood has been doing a lot of that, like in a sometimes gentle and sometimes not so gentle way, like beating me up. Sounds really extreme, but sometimes, I think we can relate to like shed those parts that are extra, those parts that are heavy, those parts that are not edible. And I feel like more I'm able to tap into that inner part of what feels good and what's delicious and how to be, because I know I've been a good mother for the last 5 years since I became a mother. But how to feel like a good mother inside, that the experience for me is not just like how I mother, but also like how I feel when I mother. So I'm figuring that out and failing every day and succeeding every day in different ways.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, like I'm able to find those gems inside of this experience.
That's so beautiful. I love that distinction too, that it's not just about, what people might perceive as being a good mother. It's how does it feel inside for you? And what does that definition even mean for you on a personal level? Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Threshold. I love that definition of threshold. So thank you. Tell us, who are you and what are you passionate about right now?
So I'm Andréa de Keijzer, and I'm so many things. I'm just beginning with where I'm from. So I was born in Mexico to a dad that comes from, my grandparents were Dutch and he was born in Mexico. So we have Dutch and Mexican culture. And then from my mom's side, I'm from Costa Rica. And I grew up in Costa Rica, in Mexico, in Holland. And then I came to Canada when I was a budding teenager. And I come from the world of dance and kinesiology and biomechanics and performance and poetry. And about 10 years ago, I was invited to the birth of my friend who was giving birth for the first time. And I fell in love with the world of birth. And thus began this journey into caring for mothers and pregnant people and birthing spaces and birthing families and the postpartum. And so I became a doula about almost 10 years ago. And I am very passionate about this ceremony that I discovered that landed into my lap about 10 years ago. That's coming from Mexico, which there we call it the baño postparto. And here in the north, often it's called the closing of the bone ceremony or the Mexican postpartum ceremony. In French, we call it le soin rituel mexicain. So it goes by many different names. And since I would say 5, 6 years, that's what I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about offering it, about teaching other people how to offer it, about understanding it better, about gathering more skills so that I can offer a safer space for people to do the rebirthing that can happen within this ritual. And I'm a mother. I've been pregnant 6 times, and I always say that I have 4 air babies that are little beings that came through, and I had these quite beautiful and intense, what I call little births. And then I'm also a mother to 2 earth children, one that is almost 5 and one that just turned 1. And I'm a mother who wanted an all-natural birth for the first birth that ended up being like 80% of birth at home and 20% of birth in the hospital by cesarean, and went through such a deep process of grief, and then learning like what happened, how did it happen, and then began this road towards birthing again 4 years later to my daughter. And we decided to do a free birth at home, just with ourselves and a friend. And so I feel like I'm a woman that carries these 2 stories, and also with like the threshing, I feel like the more I tell these stories and the more I've worked through and massaged them, the more I can find the edible part and the part that is medicine for other people. So I'm also somebody that's discovering how to talk about it and how to share it from a very raw place, but from a digested place. And that's why I also think these spaces of podcasting is such a important place for all of us to share our stories, because we learn so much from hearing each other. And we learn so much about ourselves when we are offered the sacred space of being heard and being listened to and learning how to talk about what we've lived. So
yeah,
that's
oh my
it.
gosh.
I mean, amongst other things, yeah.
I know it's always so hard to, wrap yourself up in a one little paragraph. I know you're much more complex than that, but thank you for sharing. Oh my gosh, there's so many kind of threads we can pull on. It's hard to even know which direction to go first. Yeah, thank you for sharing your stories of your births, of your experience with loss, or as you called them, little births. I love that so much. What a beautiful way to describe them. They're little births. That's so beautiful. How have your own experience of birth, of becoming a mother, of loss, of little birth, how have they all shaped how you approach birth work or approach ritual and ceremony and weaving in these traditional tools and practices?
Well, I mean, they're so intertwined, because I arrived to this ritual, the closing of the bone ceremony, after the first time I was pregnant. And so I had just met my partner like 3 months before. He's from Mexico, and we were just like wildly in love. And in all of that, I was doing the fertility awareness method and counting days and mucus and all this. But in like the fire of the beginning, we became pregnant after 3 months of being together. And even though since I was a little kid, I've been wanting to be a mom, it felt too soon. And it felt like I really was loving being with this beautiful man. But I didn't know like what we still had so much more to know, like to get to know each other. And it felt too soon. He was wonderful. He was when we talked about what to do, he said, if you want to go ahead and like we'll have a baby. If you want to like wait, I support you. So I really it wasn't long, but I sat for a few days with that feeling, and it felt like it was too soon. And so began this experience of living what it was. I decided to have a herbal abortion. And so I knew a friend who had a lot of knowledge around this, and she generously and sadly, like because of the system that we live in, had to, like it's like underground.
Yeah.
Even finding some of the tinctures, like I had to go to herbal shops, and they would say, no, we don't have it. But then like they would have it, like it felt like I was tapping into this underworld of traditional medicine and traditional knowledge that's been taken away from us. And I was very lucky to be able to have the tools and the knowledge offered to me so that I could live it. And it was a very intense and big process that I lived mostly on my own, that I birthed on my own, because I didn't want outside influences to bring fear or to bring doubt. Mm-hmm. And thus gained such a deep respect and understanding of plants. And after this little birth of this little being that we decided to let go of, it took 10 days of this process for me to start bleeding and then start cramping and start birthing. My younger sister, who's a midwife, a traditional midwife in Mexico, she offered me a closing of the bone ceremony for postpartum, because it's a ceremony that it is for when we birth a baby and we end up with a baby in our arms, a newborn, but it's also for when we birth, when we have an abortion, when we live a miscarriage, when we live a difficult period, like a path of fertility, and also for so many other life transitions, because we're often birthing in so many different ways. And when she offered me that ceremony, and with the bathing of the plants and the water and her care and the closing with the rebozos, it touched me so deeply that inside I felt I wanted to learn this so I could offer it to other people. So it's like life offered me all these opportunities, and then I felt it, I grabbed it, and I just started following it. And so I started receiving, because also there's so many ways to offer this ceremony. There's not one way. And so I started asking different people in Mexico, different women to offer me ceremonies. And learning by, like, in my skin and in my bones and in my tissues, how to offer it, how to receive it. And then I went to learn with different midwives and different doulas who offer more concrete, like, workshops and trainings around it. Mm-hmm. But so deeply fell in love with this and felt the importance of being cared for, of acknowledging, especially like after an abortion, after a miscarriage or little birth, because I feel like the languaging feels better in my tissues, of calling them little births, of being acknowledged as and being cared for and being helped with plants for the hormonal transition that is also happening. So it felt so important to learn it. And so that's always like the seed of this long path that has become my life. And eventually, about, I would say maybe like 3 years later, a friend of mine who's from Mexico invited me to give her closing of the bone ceremony. And she said, I want you to give it to me with another Mexican friend that I have. But we didn't know each other. So it's kind of like a blind date for two practitioners offering a ceremony to this common friend that we had. And that day I met my friend, who's now my friend and my sister and my colleague, Angie Yanez. And that was the beginning of our collaboration, which eventually became Collective Rebozo, which is this school, this space that we co-lead, where we work around the Rebozo, teaching people how to use it, teaching people about the history, teaching people who want to learn this ceremony in a respectful and culturally, like learning about the cultural depth that comes with it, and not just as a short one-off workshop, understanding really what we're working with, where is the historical context, what is happening currently with midwifery in Mexico, and how to develop a relationship that's not just taking, this ceremony and applying it here in the North, but having this circular relationship with communities in Mexico and communities also here in these northern territories.
Oh, there's so much I want to talk about. So we're definitely going to touch on, the more cultural piece of this, and how, especially as white women and white birth workers, how can we approach these rituals and ceremonies in a way, like you've said, that's reciprocal, that's respectful? Because, the opposite of that, we are certainly seeing, where people are just taking them and doing them, probably causing some harm, not being respectful towards where it's coming from. So we're definitely going to touch on that. But before we do that, I think for our listeners, can you lay the groundwork a little bit? Can you tell us, like, what is a closing of the bone ceremony? What is a rebozo? And how are these tools used traditionally?
Yeah, with pleasure. And I want to start by saying that I'm a daughter of mixed heritage. I'm not an indigenous person from Mexico. I'm married to one, so I have a lot of exposure and connection and respect and understanding. But it's and also these practices are coming from a country that is very mixed, like much more than here in Canada. It's a country of mestizaje, no? So and these practices, these traditions, include plants from Europe and plants that are indigenous to Mexico, and include practices. The rebozo itself is a mixture of ways of weaving and like coverings that were used in Spain during the colonial period, and also different weavings that were used by women in pre-Hispanic Mexico. So, which is very different than practices that are indigenous by a particular group, and that have these protocols that should be and much more respected and restricted, for them to exist. And also, many people will there's many things that as doulas and midwives from Mexico or with ties to Mexico, there's things that we agree with and there's things that we disagree with. And that's also part of it. And I think those conversations are always so rich in terms of understanding each of us better, like where we stand and how we are approaching it with the most respect possible. Mm-hmm. But also not with so much fear that then we deprive ourselves and perhaps people that we're caring for from these spaces that can be beneficial. And it makes me think often if there was an antibiotic that was created in Switzerland, and then the Swiss say this is only for Swiss people by Swiss doctors, and it can only be administered in Switzerland, then I personally don't think that it would be ethical if it could help somebody else. Mm-hmm. And yet it would be different than somebody in Argentina taking it and saying, oh, this is an Argentinian creation, and not giving credit and so on. So I think about that often in terms of the rebozo, which is a beautiful, it's a tissue, it's a technology, it's a way of being, a way of caring that can be beneficial to anybody in anywhere in the world. And so the rebozo is there's so many ways to describe it, but as the most basic thing, it's a woven scarf. It's often made on the loom. So it's this beautiful traditional way of weaving threads. So there's many threads that are coming together, which make it both really strong and also really supple and really soft. So it has these two opposing elements and energies. And it depends in terms of the length. It's sometimes 2.5 meters long, and then about 60 to 80 centimeters wide. And it has these fringes at the end that and this beautiful work that can be very simple or it can be really elaborate. And so a rebozo can take a day or two to make, or it can take a month or more to make. It depends on the level of detail. And also in terms of the price, it will depend as well on that. It can be made with cotton. Sometimes there's rebozos that are made with silk. Sometimes they're made with wool. And more, and this is something to be aware of, is as the rebozo becomes more popular and consumeristic culture notices and takes over, then there's a lot of rebozos now being sold that are made of synthetic fibers that are, one, not good for the environment, and two, also on the body, it feels very different. And they're often made by machines, and the artisans in Mexico are not being recognized and benefiting from those purchases. So that's something to be aware of, and is something that we always talk in terms of reciprocity of whenever possible getting a rebozo that is from a fair trade relationship and that is coming from Mexico, and that ideally most of the money is going to those people that are keeping these traditions alive in their families and in their towns. And so the rebozo it represents the hug of our grandmothers. They say that when you have a rebozo around your shoulders, or when you're being wrapped with a rebozo, it's all the grandmothers are coming to hold you and to honor you and to recognize you in this life-changing moment. And it's also, for the person using it, it's an extension of our arms. So from our heart, our arms radiate, and then we hold onto the rebozo, and then the rebozo comes and holds that person. And so it's a beautiful way to connect with somebody else, to rock their body, to sway. Sometimes it gets more with more movement, to shake, which can be so beneficial, especially after big experiences, which one of them can be birth. Especially after the birth of my daughter, I really needed to be shaken. especially in my chest. And that allowed me to cry what I hadn't been able to cry often. That shaking, that it's like that shedding, it's like sifting so that whatever needs to fall away can fall away. And we can just remain with what's edible, what's good for us. And
oh, I got chills when you first described that as a hug from our grandmothers or an extension of your arms. My whole body, I got chills. It's just beautiful. And you're talking about like this shaking feeling. And me, of course, I think about from a nervous system level, like that's as animals, that's what we need to be doing in those moments. So it's it's a nervous system tool, to put it in our Western language.
Well, and so many parts of this postpartum ceremony are coming to take care of our nervous system and to help us land after such a massive, incredible leap that we do when we give birth. And whichever way our birth ends up being, whether it's like the birth that we hoped for and wanted for years, whether it's like and there's like grief about what somebody said or what actions that people did, whether it becomes a very medicalized birth, whether it becomes a surgical birth. There's whether it's like a fast birth in the car and you just like didn't even have time to realize what was happening. So it comes in so many ways, and like in terms of scientific studies, sometimes people ask about it, but from those of us who study somatics and movement and psychology and ritual, I like to call it a technology. So it's a technology in its like raw, like earthy way, that comes and holds our both like our psyche and our heart, our emotions and our body and our whole community in such a holistic and mysterious way as well, because every time whenever we go and offer these ceremonies, like we don't know what's going to happen necessarily. We have an idea, but what opens up or not, it's a little bit up to us, like how we set the space so that the person can feel safe, but it's so much up to that person, like what they're ready to work on, to open, to feel, and really respect that person as like their path and trust their path. And so the rebozo is just coming back to the rebozo. It's a tool that's been historically traditional and indigenous midwives. They would go to births and they would wear a rebozo because Mexico, with the colonization and Catholicism, there came also this modesty of women. So it also has been used as a way of covering the head when you go to church, but also when it's cold outside, when it's raining, a way to carry our children. And then in midwives will like started using it to resolve problems in the moment when births would get long, or when mothers would have pain in their back, or when mothers would need in the postpartum that holding. And over time, these traditions get passed on. They survive also years of colonization and also of the medicalization of birth. And they're still working, like in Mexico, it's not resolved. Like it's still a constant search to maintain the possibility to be a traditional midwife and for people to birth at home and for people to use traditional knowledge. And about like 20, 30, 40 maybe years ago, it starts to become more known around the world. And in a way, it starts to become a little bit more codified in the way that like Northern minds, and I include myself too, because there's a big part of my upbringing that happened here in Canada. And so I also have that mind of writing things down and naming things and making steps and so on, which in Mexico, it's a tradition that's passed really orally and by just watching it, growing up with it and noticing it and practicing like in the moment, not so much in this codified way. But there are so many ways that the rebozo can support in pregnancy, in birth, and in postpartum, and then beyond, and just in our regular life for movement and for stretching. There's just like simple ways where we can use a rebozo it's a beautiful thing because it's with so many things that this society sells us, it has like one use. And then once you don't need it, like a maternity belt, it's amazing for that moment. But then once you're not pregnant anymore, it doesn't have that many more uses. But a rebozo can be used like to hold our pelvis, and then after you can carry your baby, and then after you can like cover your baby with it as a blanket, and you can cover yourself, and it can be a scarf, and it can be a little beautiful. If you want to make an altar, it can be a tablecloth. It just has so many ways that it can be used.
So beautiful. Like there's such a depth to this. Yeah, to the rebozo, and like the metaphor around it is just so beautiful. And that depth, I think, is really what's missing in Western culture, right? We don't have that level of depth with anything that we do. Like you said, it's very analytical. It's very, what are the steps and how do I get the result that I want? And it's always coming from our thinking brains. And I love that you've kind of
Mm.
explained that even these ceremonies, they're not taught that way. They're taught in a, you feel it. It's intuitive. It doesn't come from that left side of the brain. It's coming from somewhere else, from your tissues, from your body, from being connected to the person in front of you. And I think all of that is what's missing in Western culture, right? We don't have that. So what do you think is, yeah, like the biggest benefit that mothers can enjoy from exploring, the use of a rebozo in their own kind of birth, postpartum motherhood experience?
Mm. I think one of the main things is remembering like how to move, because we are in even those of us who try to move, we still live in a very sedentary culture.
Hmm.
And so in and birth is about movement. And
Hmm.
so there's the rebozo. I feel like it's an ally that reminds us how to move, and in a very gentle and intuitive way. It's like an invitation to movement. And so as a doula, we can show parents different techniques, different ways that the rebozo can be used in order to stretch certain parts of our body, to do suspensions, to learn how to squat. Like many people like don't squat in their regular life, and once we have kids, we have more movement in our lives because we don't stop moving after them. But for example, when it's our first child and we have a desk job, the rebozo can be this entryway into relearning how to move the way that we did as kids, and it has also this playful element. And then in terms of if we jump to the other side to postpartum, it can, because often we give birth and then we it's just like we kind of like hit the ground running, and then it's just this like day after night after day after night, that especially at the beginning where it just like time does this weird thing where you don't know, it's going so slow and so fast at the same time. And the rebozo in a way comes to hold us in place, literally, and
Hmm.
help us like realize like what happened, and help us gather back all the pieces of ourselves to like realign to our center and be held in that big experience and cry or laugh or name what we need to name. It's like a space holder for, we call what we me and Angie, we like to talk a lot about it, of the light and the shadow, and having a space to celebrate the beauty and the joys of what just happened, and also grieve, and name the hard parts, and name the parts that we are ashamed of, and the parts that we didn't like, and the parts that feel scary. So it is, I mean, and I said it's the rebozo, but it's obviously also the person that's bringing the rebozo that will make that space possible or not.
Hmm.
But the rebozo literally like will hold us, and like especially when we've had to open so much, it will help us to close ourselves back up, and to refine the edges of where our body ends and where the world begins. Because especially in postpartum, we can stay so sensitive to comments and to noises and to light, and because our psyche, everything has had to open in order to cross that mystery of birthing. And it's a way to I mean, not right away, but like after a few weeks, or sometimes it can be months, or sometimes it can be years when people receive the ceremony, but it can be a way to reclose what needs to be closed, to
Hmm.
stay balanced.
Yeah, yeah. What would be the respectful and most beneficial way to go about this? If someone's listening and thinking, wow, like this medicine sounds beautiful, I would love to experience it. How should they go about that?
Hmm. This is just like me. Like, I don't want to talk like
Yeah.
to everybody who works with the rebozo, who works with these
Hmm.
practices, who is a midwife in Mexico. And because I think it's a really good question to ask many people.
Yeah.
I mean, some ideas that I can offer is if, like, first of all, is there somebody in your town, in your city, that is from Mexico that offers this? Because I also feel that often those who are from Mexico, they may, like, some, often it's women who are immigrants who don't maybe have all the tools or all the time or all the money to invest in like a big business, you know, to make it really visible. And sometimes the people that we see the most are not necessarily coming from Mexico. So that would be like a first step to like check in, like, is there somebody from Mexico that offers this? Not that it only has to be offered by Mexican women, but just to start there, you know, because there might be somebody that is close by that that can offer it. And then I would say, like, then like find out like somebody else, it's say like, oh, there's nobody in my area, or I can't find somebody in my area. Then find out who is offering it in your area. And it's really good, I think, without without entering to this like canceling culture, because I think we are all learning and we're all in different moments of like recognizing and decolonizing our practices and grounding and finding ways of being reciprocal. But just checking in, you know, like it's like, oh, like who did you learn it from? And what ways do you give back to people and to Mexican cultures? Where do you get your rebozos from? Without making it like a big test, but just like as a way to find out, you know, like what are their practices, which can help us choose who we offer it from. There has started to be, which is really unfortunate, like in some places I've seen, it's like where like there's like trademarks starting to come into this practice. So there's like the registered mark being put at the end of like a brand, the Rebozo becoming a brand, which is really unfortunate. It's, you know, and very like disrespectful, as I find personally. It's like the way that big companies have started for a long time actually now, registering and patenting seeds, and so then only certain people can use certain seeds, and there's like a whole commercialization of it. So I would say like staying away from that if you can. And then going to find people who are thinking about this, or starting a conversation about it, because maybe somebody just learned about it and they're just starting and they're doing it like with their whole heart and they fell in love with it, and that conversation or those questions will get them thinking about how to offer it and receive it in a more respectful way. And then, I mean, like both me and Angie, one way we always stay in contact with our teachers and find out what their current challenges are and their projects are and how we can support them, whether it's through petitions, whether it's through sending money to support them, or whether like when we go to Mexico, like helping them physically or promoting what they're teaching and so on. But we, like, every time we earn money for a ceremony, a percentage, we put it aside for a fund that then we support projects in Mexico. And so that's something that I think as practitioners who are living here in the North, where there is a relative abundance of financial capacities, then like using that to send back, because like you say, like we're just so missing and thirsty for culture and for ritual and for reconnecting. And that exists much more. It's much more alive in places like Mexico. But there often, like, people do struggle, like, and midwives do struggle to make ends meet with their work. So like, how can we feed off each other? You know, like it's like we're receiving so much from this culture, and how can we give back so that the cycle is in flow and we're not just taking. So those are like questions I would look into and I would ask.
And what I'm hearing is like, it really starts with you. Like it starts with me as a white woman who's interested in these practices. It starts with me to kind of check in with myself and be like, hey, why does it matter that I, give respect and ensure that these practices, can continue? Yeah. Like, why should we care? Not that sounds so awful to say it that way, but really, like, from this culture where all we want to do is take, we're colonizers, like, why should we care? Why should we start this process of decolonization, of thinking about these things in a different way? Because it is truly so easy to just take and be like, I'm just going to use this now and not give credit where it's due. So yeah, like why should we care? Why should we do this?
Mm-hmm. And it's really tricky because I mean, like to talk about money, because some people will say like we shouldn't charge money for these ceremonies, and traditionally like they've been passed and offered within families, so there was no need to pay. Like you wouldn't pay your mother for offering you a closing of the bone ceremony, or your sister. Like you would give it to your friends and so on, because it was, and in many parts of Mexico it still is, though in many cities like it's also been broken off strategically, I think, by the systems, you know, these ways of caring for each other. And so here, where how this ceremony lands here in Canada, at least, then it's like few of us who are these like experts of this work, and it becomes our job. And we, I mean, unless we have a partner that perhaps earns enough that we can offer it for free or very little, like we do need to ask for a contribution, because often, though it can be lived in like a 3 or 4 hour version, like the full ceremony is usually 5 to 6 hours long, and often there's two of us present. So, and there's time, like all this time, and all these things that we prepare before and afterwards. We have to wash everything, and like and we usually travel to the person's home. So it's like an 8 to 9 hour day of two people that we're offering. So sometimes people are like, well, you charge too much. But when you really look at it, like we're earning something like $40 an hour for this really deep and really demanding work that sometimes after we're like, whoa, it's like we hold. I feel like sometimes people open up in ways that they can't or they won't in other spaces, and we are holding space for them, which is also it's a great honor, but it's also it's very demanding. So in terms of money, like I think it's also good to just stay curious, you know, and not because somebody's charging less, it's better, and somebody's charging more is worse, or vice versa, you know, like just like in terms of the money, like I think each of us has a different relationship to it, and our current context, you know, that allows us sometimes to be more generous and to offer it like on a pay what you can basis, or as an exchange as well. And sometimes like we do need to bring in money so we can pay our rent and take care of our family's needs. So in that part, like I think we need to be like curious and flexible about it as well. But understanding the roots of it and why it feels weird is because traditionally like money was not a part of it. It was just something that has existed and has been offered from one person and one woman to another woman.
Yeah, yeah. And like the reality is that we do live in a capitalistic society. We have kind
For
of
now.
for now, yes, yes, for now. I hope it changes too. But I've even thought that way just about doula care in general, right? Like I wish I could offer it for free. Sometimes especially postpartum care, I feel like I'm doing the job that, a mom could be doing, like somebody's mother could be doing, And it's unfortunate that that's just not the way that our families are kind of set up right now. You might live far away from family. You just might not have anybody else around you. We've kind of lost even the knowledge of, well, I don't even know what to do in postpartum, how to help somebody heal. So yeah, it's like we've kind of lost that village feeling, and we do kind of have to pay for it now. That's kind of the culture that we're living in, which is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Does it mean people get the care they should have? Yes. Yeah.
Something that just to add to that,
Yeah.
because something that we've realized as we go is that when we do charge enough for what we're offering, it allows us to be in a financially stable place where we can answer to people who don't have the means to pay for it,
Yeah.
or can only pay for half of it, or can only do a trade. I have found that when I undercharge, I'm financially stressed, and so when somebody asks, it's like too much. Like I can't answer to that person. So there is a dance there, and we have decided for a long time we don't put like our price online. so that people contact us, and then we let them know what we usually charge. And we always say, like, if money is an impediment, to let us know, that we will always find a way. Like, for anybody who wants to receive this, like, we'll always find a way. And that way we have a conversation. And sometimes people will write, actually, like, at this time I can't afford it. Like, I'll be in touch, like, later. And then we can write back and say, like, let's talk about it. Let's talk on the phone and see how we can make it happen. If you need it right now, like, there's always ways. And I think that's an element also that is very important in terms of finding a practitioner that has that's mindset, who is not just for the people who have the economic means, but that it can be accessible to a wider range of people who want to experience the ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What's your kind of hope for the future of, like, postpartum care and healing, especially here, like in Canada, in the North? Yeah, what's your hope, both for, like, the future of postpartum care and the future of these more traditional practices within it?
That's a good question. I don't ask it a lot. I just, like, no, but a while ago I was talking about it, and I mean, I would love for these practices to come back into our common knowledge, whether it's this one. There are so many, and if we all dig into our cultural heritage, we find ways, and some of them have been preserved more than others, and some of them have traveled, and that's also the history of traditional practices, that they travel and they morph and they adapt. And so it's good to stay close to the roots, and it's also okay to be flexible with how they need to adapt. And both me and Angie, we've adapted so many things to the context here, and have to get creative so that it is accessible to what people can receive and can live here and their context. But yeah, my hope is that, like, it would just, like, all these practices would just return to our daily lives, and to our to our hands and to our bodies, and that the songs would come back. There's so much healing that comes with songs. We often, in these ceremonies, we sing so much, and there's something about being sung to and being rocked, and that it just, like, allows us as adults to become a baby again, and to cry what we need to cry, and to moan, and to, like, also sometimes, like, to complain, to be like, it's hard, because it can be so hard. Whatever stage of maternity, it doesn't have to be, like, the immediate postpartum. Like, there's so many moments where in the spiral, like, we cross really dark places, and to be witnessed, to be held, to normalize, to be told, like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. You're not alone. I really hope that for all of us, and that we can, I think, like, through our phones, we're all, like, searching for connection. And it's something that in my postpartum, I'm just like, why am I, like, so addicted to this, like, machine that is so far from everything that I, like, want and believe. And I think we are searching for that sisterhood, for that community, for those stories that reflect us, that remind us, that inspire us. And so that it can, like, move away from these, like, light box machine little computers, and can come back into, like, the felt sense, and the lived, like, the skin to skin experience.
So beautiful. There's just, it's just such a rich and deep, like, yeah, there's so many threads that we could continue to pull on, but I'm seeing we're already almost at time, which is wild to me, because I feel like we just
started.
We just skimmed the surface here. There's so much more I wanted to talk to you about, but I guess from more of, like, both a mother or a birth worker perspective, if we're interested in exploring this a little bit more, where should we start? How should we go about it? What do you offer, and who do you offer it to?
So, I mean, where to start? There's a lot that you can read about online, about the Rebozo, about the ceremony, like just, like, in a very tangible, like, close way, like I mean, it's going back to the computers. There's not a lot of books. There's now Livy Navet, who's one of our teachers, who's she's publishing a book around the Rebozo. So there are some books available, but not too many. And online there's lots of lots of videos that you can just like come and see, because also just to see like, what is this, what is this ceremony, what happens, because it's a very, what I love about this ceremony is that it's very domestic. It's using the elements that are found in a home, these plants that often we have in our pantry, pots and pans, blankets, towels, and then sometimes like a little candle, and then the magic and the sacred emerges from there. And we're using, massaging and moving the body and bathe, like this act of bathing and being bathed, and this act of being fed, and then what we do with the rebozo, like with the closing at the end. But there's many ways of offering. So this online, you can find different ways that people do it, that women and midwives offer it in Mexico. Me and Angie with Collective Rebozo. People can follow us. We have an Instagram account. The English one is at rebozo.collective. And then the French one is that flipped. So it's like collective.rebozo. And we offer training. So we have found different ways of teaching people how to do this. That is both responding to the cultural context of here in Canada, but also trying as much as possible to give it as much time so that people are not just having a little taste and then leaving without the whole experience. So for closing of the bones, if people want to learn about it, we offer a 60-hour training where there's some work that people do beforehand of readings and audios and videos. Then we meet usually either 3 days and then 3 days, or sometimes we do like an intensive, which is like 6 days, where we teach all the hands-on practices, and then people get to live, to receive a ceremony themselves and to offer it alongside with us. So we're really doing this, seeing it and living it how it's done in real life, and touching each other's stories and hearts. And then people go off and then they practice and they offer for free a few ceremonies, and they do some research. And then we meet back again to celebrate, and it's often like with everybody that takes, it's like a lifelong accompaniment, and as they go off and practice, because at the beginning, it's like we're more in the technical, practical parts of of the objects and the steps, and then I feel like as we get more comfortable, people start opening up bigger stories, and then it's really good to have a community that holds us. Same thing in birthwork, when like the first time we accompany a family that is living a perinatal loss, it's like you can learn about that in doula school, but until it happens, it's like the depth of it, like you really need your community to support you and to hold you. So we do our best to weave that container of practitioners. And so we teach in Quebec, mostly in French. And then I've started branching out into English-speaking Canada. So I've been teaching here in Toronto. Next year, I'll probably be out west. I've been to the States a couple of times to teach. And we also are starting to offer retreats in Mexico. So people can come and learn and meet traditional healers and midwives there, and live the sweat lodge and learn more about the cultural elements behind these ceremonies. So that's also something that we're working on and that we're offering, that we're really excited about. And maybe, I don't know, one day, like we offer a guide that comes with each training, which now like it's this like beautiful, like very in-depth guide. That the other day I was like, this is almost a book. It's like, it's like 60 pages long. So maybe one day we'll publish a little something, but that's the thing. We don't want people to like get it and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to read this. And then I know how to do it, and not to judge, because sometimes people live far away, and that's the only way that they can make this accessible to their community. And so I don't want to be like saying like what's right and what's wrong, but ideally we learn it like from somebody else, ideally from somebody who has connections and to Mexico as well. Sometimes that's not possible, but just coming as close to the source, and to be infused, because it's a practice that has so many levels, and it's not a technique, it's a whole cosmovision, and it's a much deeper way of understanding how to create it. That is, it's like even hard to describe. I mean, the way that rituals are, you can describe one layer, but then once you live it, there are not many words to say like what is actually happening underneath.
Yeah. 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 And I think it comes back to intention. Like you're saying, you don't want people to just read a book and then think that they know what they're doing now. It's this idea of embodiment over just taking something in and assuming you know what you're talking about now. It's what's your intention behind this? What's the intention underneath? Are you doing this because you really want to serve people and you really want to share this beautiful offering with people or with yourself? Or is it because you want to just, make money off some new tool that will, advance your career in some way? So again, it's coming back to that intention. What's your intention there? Yeah.
And it's like if we wanted to learn acupuncture, it's like there's so many books about acupuncture, but I would go to a teacher to learn about it, and I would study for a long time before venturing off.
For sure.
Because we are opening very important spaces, and it can, we can re-traumatize people if we open a seemingly safe space that is not, and people do open up and share, and they can leave worse off than they arrived, and that's not at all what the ceremony is about. It's really important to be sensitive and attentive to that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. To close us out, and I know you've kind of already so beautifully spoke to this, but if you could sum up, what does the Rebozo mean to you? Like as more than just like a textile or a tool, and I know you've touched on this, but like what does it mean to you on a deeper level? Yeah.
I often think about like the spirit of the Rebozo as a being, as a creature, as an entity that takes care of me and that I take care of it. And it's like, what do you need? And what are you doing? Like why are you traveling to all these places and sharing? To me, it means it is like a space, like more than an object. It's a space, and it's like a space of landing. It's a space of care. It's a space of tenderness. It's a space of like coming undone, like getting naked and becoming a baby, and then from there like rebirthing. So for me, the Rebozo is that space, and it's also this really like these threads that have connected me to this community that I dreamed of. Like I had hoped for it, and through the work with the Rebozo, especially in Montreal, it's just like there's like a group of what we call ourselves like the bathers, and we like bathe each other, and we are at this place where I was telling you, like where I've been hoping that it's like something that's part of our that's very like accessible, and so we take turns taking care of each other with these ceremonies. And so when somebody is living at hard transition, we like either that person calls out to the group like I need like care, or like somebody else notices and suggests it, and then sometimes like 2 of us show up, sometimes like 12 of us show up, and it becomes this incredible like net of care of weaving. And I feel like that, I mean, to me, that is the Rebozo. It's like that like all those threads coming together to wrap, to hold, and to, if we connect back to this hug of the grandmothers, it's like we are the grandmothers of the future. We're weaving. It's like we're training ourselves, we're preparing ourselves for what we want to pass on to our daughters. And I really like to remind myself, like as a second generation feminist, it's like my mom opened up so much like ground for me. In terms of just like practical and like professional like opportunities. And I feel that I want to maintain that for my daughter, but also I feel like I'm opening up this more heart space, like I feel like my mom had to be so strong in order to raise us and to break out of molds that had been generationally present. And I feel like I have the opportunity to go into these more like softer, squishier, more sensitive places and offer that to the next generation. So I feel like the Rebozo is that doorway, that like gentle and strong reason or spirit that lets us through.
So beautiful. Thank you. I want to just keep talking to you, but
we can do a part 2
Yes,
Eventually, that'd be.
I think we will. I think we'll have to. So you did kind of mention the collective Rebozo social media, but is there anywhere else we can find you? What's the best way to connect with you and the work that you do? Yeah, let us know.
We have a website, so it's collectiverebozo.com, and it's there's a part in French and there's a part in English. And through Instagram, I'm the in little businesses, like I'm the social media department of our, and so like we try to share and to like through that place we like what things that are coming up, and also history and information about the Rebozo, and also current affairs, so that people can be in touch. If ever people are already using the Rebozo in their practices and this conversation helps them to wake up that desire to have a reciprocal relationship with communities in Mexico, they can get in contact with us, and through like our website or through our email. And my dream is also to be like a place where people that have the desire but don't know yet how to connect, to help people connect directly to projects in Mexico, so that they can develop that relationship, because it changes everything. Like we know who's making the rebozos that we use, and we know how that family is doing, and we know Tere, and we know like when she's having a rough time, and when she like needs to borrow money, and we send her money, and you know, like when her kids are sick, like it changes everything. Like when the tools and that we're using have like a personal element behind. So people want to be in touch about that, and want to learn how to knit a relationship of reciprocity. We're very, very much open to that. And I think that email is best. Yeah. There's like Facebook, but it's like, let's stay out of it. I think email, and we have a newsletter that goes out. So if people want to sign up for that as well, on our website, they can sign up for our newsletter.
Amazing.
And come visit us and come see us in person, or invite us. Like if there's a group, you know, that like in Ottawa, there's a woman that's organizing currently a group. And so like if there's, for the closing of the bones, it's like 6 people, like minimum. For the other one, it's like 10, 15 people minimum. Like if people gather a group big enough, then we can travel and it makes sense, and we can offer training. So I'm talking to somebody in Calgary. I'm also talking to somebody in Victoria. And we're working in like coming to Gatineau as well. So there's that. I'm a Sagittarius, so like you say, like come over, and I'm like I'm very happy to travel. I have an incredible husband that supports me, and my kids are. I mean, my little one's still little, but she travels with me. But soon I'll be able to travel a little bit more.
Amazing! Thank you so much for everything today, Andréa. This was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be ever so grateful if you would leave a review on Apple or rate the show wherever you're listening from. It really does help this show grow and blossom. All right, see you next time.